An interval is the distance between two notes, between one note, which we will call the root note, and any of the 11 notes, and we name them numerically. Okay. If this note was my root, this note is called the second. Now this doesn't just come from anywhere. If you know, like most people do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and it's, if it's on the guitar, it'll sound like this. You can see it's a whole step between the first and the second note. Between the second and the third is also a whole step. Between the third and the fourth is a half a step. Between the fourth and the fifth is a whole step. Between the fifth and the sixth is also a whole step. Between the sixth and the seventh is also a whole step. Between the seventh and the one again is half a step. Now we need to name the notes between 1 and 2, between 2 and 3, and so on. These notes are given names that relate to the note either before or after. So if we start on 1, and the note between 1 and 2 is that note, we call that a flattened 2. So it goes 1, flat 2, 2, flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5, flat 6, 6, flat 7, 7, back to 1. You'll notice that I only used flats. This is for no particular reason. I could have used sharps. So the note between, for example, 2 and 3 was a flattened 3. Now that could have been called a sharpened second, but I just elected to use flats all the way through. The next thing to do is to give those numbers, or those flattened or sharpened numbers, names. Now, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do are the notes of what we call the major scale. And those intervals, bar the fourth and the fifth, are called major intervals. So from 1 to 2 is a major second. From 1 to 3 is a major third. As I said before, the fourth and the fifth are different. They are called perfect intervals. Now, what this means is a perfect interval cannot be major or minor, or is not major or minor. So it goes from the beginning, it goes 1, then 2 is a major second, 3 is a major third, 4 is a perfect fourth, 5 is a perfect fifth, 6 is a major sixth, 7 is a major seventh. And then the note back to 1 is called the octave. If you start with a major interval and you flatten it, in other words, you make it smaller by a half a step, that major interval becomes a minor. If you flatten it once again, it becomes a diminished interval. Now you'll say, but if, for example, I've taken a third and flattened it, it becomes a minor third. If I flatten it again, it becomes a second, which would be right. But you do need two names for the same note, as we'll see later when we get into building complex chords. That's why all these funny names like E7, sharp 9, all that, they sound so complicated when they really aren't. Okay, the next thing to see is if you raise a major interval or sharpen it, it becomes what we call augmented. So a raised third is an augmented third. The next thing to see is a perfect interval. Now remember, fourths and fifths are perfect. That means that they cannot be major or minor. So if you flatten a fifth interval, it becomes immediately diminished. If you raise it, it's the same as any other interval, it becomes augmented. Let's just go over the idea of why you need two names for a note. What happens if you want a major third and a minor third in a chord? You're a bit stuck because you've named the third and you've got two, so you need to call one of them, which will be the minor third, an augmented second. So what you will call it is an augmented second and a major third, so that the person who's reading the piece of music or you're relating the information to will understand exactly what you mean.